Scottie Scheffler fought the law, and the law didn't win. And along the way, he found out the #1 rule when it comes to dealing with police officers. You cannot trust them to accurately report an incident that involves them. Yeah, kids don't trust the police. You might have heard that the police arrested golf phenom Scottie Scheffler after a seemingly minor traffic incident, so of course we made an entire mini documentary about it. Our resident prosecutor Spencer the Scowl Owl explains all the crazy twists and turns that this story took.
Scottie Scheffler. Apparently he's a pretty famous golfer, #1 in the world, I guess. Around 6 a.m. on Friday, May 17th, Scheffler was heading to Valhalla Golf Club in Louisville, Kentucky for the second round of the 2024 PGA Championship. A few hours earlier, a security guard at Valhalla was struck and killed by a shuttle bus. The Louisville Metro Police Department responded and stopped traffic in several lanes to secure the scene. This happened close to Gate 1 at Valhalla, which was the gate for athletes to enter. Numerous officers were present in uniform and wearing high reflective vests to direct traffic. It was a dark and rainy morning. What happened next? According to his police report, Detective Brian Gillis was directing traffic into Gate 1. He observed Scheffler driving eastbound toward Gate 1. He then observed Scheffler turn into the westbound lane. Detective Gillis stopped Scheffler and attempted to give instructions. Scheffler refused to comply and accelerated forward, dragging Detective Gillis to the ground. According to the report, Detective Gillis suffered pain, swelling, and abrasions to his left wrist and knee, and his uniform pants, valued at $80, were damaged beyond repair. Detective Gillis was treated by emergency personnel at the hospital. Scheffler, meanwhile, was arrested and charged with a felony and 3 misdemeanors. The felony is second-degree assault of Detective Gillis. The misdemeanors are minor: third-degree criminal mischief for wrecking the uniform pants, reckless driving, and disregarding signals from officers directing traffic. After Scheffler was arrested, Scheffler's family contacted Louisville defense attorney Steve Romines, who got Scheffler released on his own recognizance, which means no bail money, just pinky promise to show up to court.
Yeah, he was a low risk of non-appearance, no danger to the community, so he was released on his own recognizance.
This shouldn't be a surprise to anyone, really, because Scheffler doesn't have a criminal history and doesn't really pose much of a threat to the public. Scheffler made it back to the tournament in time to compete, and later released a statement saying it was a big misunderstanding stemming from a very chaotic situation. Hey, simple, right? Well, if it were, we wouldn't be making this video. You see, not only was the world's #1 golfer arrested and charged with a felony the morning of a major tournament, it just so happened that the whole thing happened right in front of a car full of ESPN on-air personalities. Reporter Jeff Darlington tweeted the news right after it happened. Breaking news: world #1 golfer Scottie Scheffler has been detained by police in handcuffs after a misunderstanding with traffic flow led to his attempt to drive past a police officer into Valhalla Golf Club. The police officer attempted to attach himself to Scheffler's car, and Scheffler then stopped his vehicle at the entrance to Valhalla. The police officer then began to scream at Scheffler to get out of the car. When Scheffler exited the vehicle, the officer shoved Scheffler against the car and immediately placed him in handcuffs. He's now being detained in the back of the police car. Shortly after his tweet, Darlington went live on ESPN to give more detail. Now we're going to come back to what Darlington said on ESPN in a few minutes. It's a fascinating case study in how eyewitnesses process and express what they've just experienced. But to truly appreciate it, we have to fast forward just a little bit. Darlington's tweet and ESPN interview ignited a firestorm. Combined with Scheffler's status as a famous golfer and his claim that it was all a big misunderstanding, significant doubt crept into the public's perception of what happened that morning. It certainly didn't help that the Louisville Metro Police Department has had its share of scandal over the last few years. It really extra didn't help that a few days after the fracas, the police department announced that there was no body camera footage from that morning, not from Detective Gillis and not from any other police officer. Incidentally, this resulted in Detective Gillis getting a written counseling from his supervisor. But while there was no body camera footage, there were videos. A week after the incident, the city released 2 videos on YouTube. The reaction was, well, not positive for the Louisville Metro Police Department.
I'll tell you what. There is no cop in America that's like, yep, that cop represents all cops. Because it's situations that happen with cops like this that make all other cops look like assholes.
One video is from a pole camera across the road. The other video is from a dash camera in a parked police car. Let's look at the pole camera footage first. It's 4 minutes long, and some orientation first. This is Shelbyville Road, a highway that runs generally east-west here. The entrance to Valhalla Golf Club is on the upper left of the screen, on the north side of Shelbyville Road. At this point, Shelbyville Road has 4 lanes, shoulders on the sides, and a 5th turn lane in the middle. All of the lanes are blocked east of the entrance due to the earlier fatal collision. There's gridlock on the southern 2 lanes, that's traffic that would be otherwise traveling eastbound past the entrance. So apparently the police decided that the northern 2 lanes would be split. One lane would be eastbound traffic to get into Valhalla, and the other would be westbound traffic leaving the area. Most of the view from the pole camera is obscured by stationary buses on the 2 lanes in the foreground. The police car with the dash camera is one of the vehicles in the center of the frame. We can see a stationary bus at a diagonal angle to the club entrance. At around the 28-second mark, we can see reflections of headlights on the fence at the entrance of the club. Scheffler's car then appears as it turns into the entrance. It turns on the left-hand or north side of the diagonal bus. We can see Detective Gillis running on the left side of Scheffler's car. Scheffler stops the car. Detective Gillis appears to swipe with his right arm toward the driver's side door, and the remainder of the video is Scheffler getting arrested. Now let's look at the dash camera. This one is inexplicably almost 56 minutes long. At around the 20-minute and 50-second mark, or about 5:59 a.m. according to the dashcam's internal clock, we see a bus approach the entrance and stop. This is the diagonally parked bus from the pole cam. The door to the bus remains closed. About 90 seconds later, a few things happen at once. At the 22:30 mark, the door to the diagonal bus opens. The bus and a couple police officers obscure what's happening with Scheffler's car, but we can get some hints. We can see the reflection of headlights in the rain-slicked road behind and beneath the bus. Scheffler's car appears to stop at 22:36 and then starts moving 10 seconds later. We can follow the reflection of the headlights and then see Scheffler's car turn into the entrance. We don't see Detective Gillis running in the dash camera footage because he's masked by Scheffler's moving car. But we can see what is probably the light of a handheld flashlight moving chaotically on the road right behind Scheffler's car. In the same time frame, the driver of the diagonal bus gets out and approaches a group of police officers. The rest of the dash cam just shows Scheffler getting arrested.
Now, if the cops are trying to frame you before an important golf tournament, you'll want a good lawyer. But if you want a great lawyer, let my law firm, the Eagle Team, help. If you or a loved one is suffering from mesothelioma, lung cancer, or pleural disease, if you've suffered a data breach, especially if you got one of those data breach letters, or if you were just involved in a car crash, we can represent you or help find you the right attorney. It's so important to talk to a lawyer early in the process so you can learn what your options are and maximize your recovery. So just click on the link in the description or call the number that's on screen for a free consultation with my team. Because you don't just need a legal team, you need the Eagle Team. The link is down below.
Okay, so why did we just look at these videos? Like we're analyzing the Zapruder film of JFK's assassination. You know, back and to the left, back and to the left.
Back and to the left, back and to the left.
Remember what I said about Jeff Darlington and eyewitnesses. After Darlington tweeted about Scheffler's arrest, he went on ESPN to talk about what he saw. This was fresh on his mind. For about 10 minutes, Darlington gave 3 separate accounts of what happened, each building on and adding to or clarifying the last. Listen carefully, because what you're going to hear is so common from an eyewitness, saying what he saw, but sometimes in ambiguous ways, and drawing conclusions that are not necessarily supported by his own observations. And this isn't any criticism of Darlington in any way. It's just the reality of eyewitness accounts by human beings. Let's listen to his first account of what happened.
Scottie Scheffler has been detained by police officers, placed in the back of a police vehicle in handcuffs after he tried to pull around what he believed to be security, ended up being police officers. They told him to stop. When he didn't stop, the police officer attached himself to the vehicle. Scheffler then traveled another 10 yards before stopping the car. The police officer then grabbed at his arm, attempting to pull him out of the car before Scheffler eventually opened the door, at which point the police officer pulled Scheffler out of the car, pushed him up against the car, and immediately placed him in handcuffs.
Now, if you listen carefully, 2 things stand out. First, Darlington said that Scheffler tried to pull around what he believed to be security. How does Jeff know that Scheffler believed Detective Gillis was a security guard rather than a police officer? This will become clear later, but it's important to point out that Darlington is making a conclusion here about Scheffler's mental state. Second, the sequence of events is not entirely clear. Darlington says that the police officer attached himself to the vehicle, which is close to, but not entirely consistent with his tweet, in which he said that the police officer attempted to attach himself to the vehicle. It matters because the very next thing Darlington says is that Scheffler traveled another 10 yards before stopping the car. The police officer then grabbed at his arm. In this version, it almost sounds like Scheffler was dragging the police officer for 10 yards, which I don't think anyone is actually alleging. A few minutes later, Darlington clarifies what he saw and adds some context.
So there was a bus that was essentially waiting to enter the property. Traffic was backed up miles because we were told by police officers there was a pedestrian fatality. Police officers also instructed us that the only people that were allowed to enter Valhalla Golf Club were players. We were then positioned second in line to enter Valhalla Golf Club behind a bus that did not have a driver in the driver's seat. Police officers were trying to attempt to figure out why that bus was still sitting there at the entrance.
Now, Darlington's comment about the bus having no driver and police officers trying to figure out why there's no driver is fascinating. It's fascinating because if you watch the videos, it's not true. Not in the sense of a lie. We just know that it's not true. In the dash camera video, we can see the bus approach the entrance and then sit for about 90 seconds before the driver exits to speak with police officers. The driver exits at almost exactly the same time as Scheffler attempts to pull into Valhalla, after the alleged dragging of the police officer.
We were waiting behind that car. Scheffler's car, did not know it was Scheffler's car at the time. It was marked as an official vehicle of the PGA Championship. It had that marking on the side. He was the only person in the vehicle. He was driving the vehicle. He attempted to pull around into the shoulder, which was a wide shoulder. It was not off-road by any means. He pulled his car around at that point. That's when the police officer told him he needed to stop. I shouldn't assume anything. It seemed as if he said something to the police officer and then continued to go. He went again about 10 yards before the police officer then started to bang on his vehicle, yell obscenities. Eventually, when Scheffler lowered the window, the police officer grabbed his arm and started to pull it out of the vehicle.
So why does Darlington think that at the time Scheffler got into it with Detective Gillis, police officers are actively trying to figure out why there's no driver in the bus directly in front of him? Again, this is no criticism of Darlington. He's not lying. It's just something that the human mind does in stressful situations, especially fast-paced situations, where a lot of unexpected things happen in a short period of time, and maybe you weren't really paying attention when things started. Maybe some police officers later tried to figure out why the bus was stationary. Maybe Darlington saw the empty driver's seat when he was watching Scheffler being led away in handcuffs. Either way, something in Darlington's mind messed up the sequencing and narrative structure. Back to ESPN. Darlington adds to the narrative one more time.
Some more information, too, that I should, as this is all coming to mind. I attempted to then walk across the street to speak with police officers, instructed that I was a member of the media. They told me that I was now part of an investigation, that I very aggressively walked me to the other side of the road and told me I'd be arrested if I continued to pursue. When I did attempt to get to the back of the squad car, I did hear Scottie try to address the person who ripped him from the vehicle, the police officer ripped him from the vehicle, and tell him, I did not know you were a police officer. At least based on what I heard Scottie say to the police officer, some confusion about that.
Darlington said that he heard Scheffler say to Detective Gillis, I did not know you were a police officer. This takes us back to Darlington's first account. Remember, he said Scheffler tried to pull around what he believed to be security. Now we know why he said that, because Darlington later overheard Scheffler say it. But Darlington didn't make that clear in his first account. He just apparently took Scheffler's statement at face value, concluded it was true, and incorporated it into his narrative. And he did that apparently without considering the at least possibility that Scheffler's statement to Detective Willis was self-interested at the time that he made it. Okay, so why is this so important? Why am I beating up on Darlington? Well, I'm not trying to beat up on him. I'm sure Darlington meant to convey, in all honesty, what he saw for the public's information. I'm just using Darlington to illustrate a point about eyewitnesses, about how we remember a sequence of events and express those memories. We aren't computers or video cameras. Our minds are imperfect and often fill in gaps or connect dots in ways that don't actually correspond to reality. This is particularly important because we don't have any body camera. What we really end up with is having a bunch of eyewitnesses, starting with the two most important, Scheffler and Detective Gillis. Each of them, I guarantee it, will have imperfect memories to some extent, not to mention some incentive, conscious or unconscious, to craft a narrative that casts them in a slightly better light. Scheffler has already expressed that it was chaotic and a misunderstanding. We have a short arrest report from Detective Gillis, but it's not the fleshed out narrative report that I guarantee exists at the police department. Not to mention all of the other police officers who were on duty that night, some of whom may have seen the whole thing or just part of it. We also have Darlington's companions in the ESPN car. One of them, Bob Wischusen, largely corroborates Darlington's account, but he expresses the key moment differently and with less certainty. When Scheffler drove past him, the cop got very angry pursuing the car. My impression was he was kind of running alongside, chasing the car, and maybe he tripped and fell. I mean, there was kind of an outcropping or medium, by the front gate. And keep in mind, it was raining. It was 6 o'clock in the morning. It was dark. Asked about Darlington's characterization of the officer attaching himself to the car, Wischusen said, "I could see him stumble, but I did not have a very clear view of exactly how you want to characterize his contact with the car." Wischusen puts the cherry on top here. In addition to the imperfection inherent in our memories and how we articulate them, it was raining, it was early in the morning, and it was dark. These are factors that directly aware awareness, perception, and memory formation. Wischusen also points to something important, which is vantage point. We know that Scheffler's car passed the ESPN car on the left. Detective Gillis presumably approached Scheffler's car on the driver's side on the shoulder. And based on what we see in the dash camera video, Scheffler's vehicle stopped ahead of the ESPN car, but not too far ahead. So how much could the occupants of the ESPN car see, and how much was blocked by Scheffler's car? Again, what did Darlington and Wischusen see versus conclude? Sometimes this is exactly what a trial is for. Structured questioning by lawyers can parse out observation versus conclusion when it's done well. So where does this leave us? While it may end up a battle of eyewitnesses, there is some physical evidence, Detective Gillis's injuries and torn pants. No doubt the prosecution would see these as corroboration of Detective Gillis's version of events. Unfortunately for the county attorney, Wischusen suggests that Detective Gillis may have tripped and fallen. And I'm not sure that the district attorney's office will be able to find an expert to say that the physical evidence is only consistent with being dragged versus tripping. Scheffler's defense attorney certainly seems confident. He says either the charges will be dismissed or they're going to take it to trial.
Scottie Scheffler didn't do anything wrong. We're not interested in settling the case. We will either try it or it'll be dismissed.
Brave words and a good show, but that's awfully easy to say this early in the game. I think he's right about the felony assault and even the criminal mischief crimes, because those both have intentional mental states. It's alleged that Scheffler intentionally injured Detective Gillis and intentionally damaged his uniform pants. A competent prosecutor might get a knowing or reckless mental state at trial, but I really don't think intentionality is there from what little is on the public record. I just don't. That said, there's a decent case for the other two misdemeanors, reckless driving and disregarding signals from an officer directing traffic. First, reckless driving in Kentucky is really more like careless driving. The statute says drivers have to drive carefully. So that's kind of a low bar. Even if you believe Scheffler that he didn't know Detective Gillis was a police officer, that's not a defense to reckless driving. It's also not a defense to disregarding signals from an officer directing traffic, because that's what's called a strict liability offense. Knowledge that it's a police officer is not an element of the crime. So my guess is if Scheffler is offered some kind of diversion deal or maybe some sort of traffic ticket treatment on the reckless driving or the disregarding signals charges, I don't know Kentucky law, I don't know if that's a thing, but I think it's quite possible that he takes a resolution like that just to make this whole thing go away and probably in a short amount of time have a clean criminal record. That would be a reasonable outcome, all things considered, based on what we know right now. Anyway, after he was released from jail, Scheffler got right back to the golf course and hit a birdie on the first hole, which is a good thing in golf, I guess.
Nice.
Oh! Hello, Dad!
And breaking news, all charges against Scheffler have now been dismissed. Jefferson County Attorney Mike O'Connell said that after his office conducted a thorough review of the case, he could not proceed with the prosecution. This is no surprise since you just heard a real prosecutor say that he probably would not move forward with the felony charge, and the misdemeanors are questionable. O'Connell filed a motion to dismiss the charges, and the judge approved the motion, dismissing the case with prejudice. That means the prosecutor can't bring the charges again, and the matter is officially over. O'Connell said that he agreed with Scheffler that the incident was just a big misunderstanding.
Therefore, based upon the totality of the evidence, my office cannot move forward in the prosecution of the charges filed against Mr. Scheffler. Mr. Scheffler's characterization that this was, quote, a big misunderstanding, close quote, is corroborated by the evidence.
But this is a pretty big misstep for the Louisville Police Department. As Spencer pointed out, nothing on the video corroborates the assertion that Scheffler actually dragged Detective Gillis for 10 yards, if at all. And for reasons, Detective Gillis did not have his body camera on, which made it impossible to figure out exactly what happened at the scene. Mike O'Connell said that there wasn't evidence to substantiate the charges.
However, Mr. Scheffler's actions and the evidence surrounding their exchange during this misunderstanding do not satisfy the elements of any criminal offenses.
And it's interesting to note that Detective Gillis has been disciplined several times before this incident. In 2013, Gillis was suspended for driving an intoxicated civilian in his vehicle while doing donuts. He also has been disciplined at least 3 times for missing court. In 2021, Gillis was reprimanded for pursuing a vehicle that wasn't committing a violent crime and wasn't wanted on a warrant and without notifying his superiors. So all of that would be interesting evidence in a lawsuit for false arrest. However, Scheffler's lawyer said that even though he had grounds for a lawsuit, he wouldn't pursue litigation against Gillis or the department. And Scheffler's attorney went out of his way to praise police for being police. The Louisville PD said that they accept the DA's decision and they will continue their efforts to mitigate violent crime. And that's good because it's not like the Louisville police have a history of unprofessional conduct. But if Scottie had remained in jail, I bet he'd miss having gourmet meals at home. But now that he's a free man, he can with today's sponsor, Factor. Because Factor makes meeting your nutrition goals easier than ever by delivering gourmet, fresh, never frozen, dietitian-approved meals right to your doorstep. And the meals are completely ready to eat in just 2 minutes. You can eliminate the hours it would take to shop, meal prep, and cook so you can spend your day doing the things you actually want to do. You can eat stress-free this summer, plus you'll never get bored with what you're eating. You can choose from over 35 different options a week, including ones that are keto, calorie smart, vegan, and veggie, and more. And on top of that, Factor offers over 60 add-ons that help make your weeknights even more delicious and nutritious. Like breakfast, smoothies, juices, small bites, and more that can keep you going no matter what's on your schedule. Factor meals arrive at your door pre-prepared and ready to eat in just 2 minutes. In the same amount of time I could even think about going to the grocery store, my Factor meal is already done and ready to eat. And thank goodness, because I was already getting hungry. Because sometimes I just want a good, healthy meal without actually having to cook. And it's surprisingly affordable, way less expensive than takeout. And now Factor offers Gourmet Plus meals as part of your weekly options. You can try meals that feature premium ingredients like filet mignon, shrimp, truffle butter, broccolini, and asparagus. But honestly, you can't go wrong with their normal offerings either. Factor's team of gourmet chefs creates each meal to help you feel your best all day long, and they really are extremely delicious. And Factor is flexible. You can pause or reschedule your deliveries at any time. But all this is making me hungry, so click on the link below or the one that's on screen and use the code LegalEagle50 to get 50% off your first Factor box, plus 20% off your next month of orders. Again, just click on the link below and use the code LegalEagle50 for 50% off your first Factor box and then 20% off your next month of orders. And then after that, click on this box over here for more Legal Eagle, or I'll see you in court.